Hey guys, Jeff and Ben here from Passive Income Unlocked. Joining us today is Mike from Below Average Blogger. If you haven't checked out his channel, definitely do so. He's got a lot of information over there. I'll link to him in the description below. He's actually pretty new to blogging, but he's very intelligent. He's taken one of his blogs up to over 50,000 page views per month in less than a year. So really, really awesome progress. If you're new to blogging, check him out. He's got a lot of great videos that'll help you out. Mike, thanks for joining us. Looking forward to chatting today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jeff. I appreciate you guys putting this together and kind of facilitating this group effort. I appreciate the extremely nice intro. I don't know if I can own all of that, but I will take the intro, so I appreciate it.
Awesome. So since you kind of got this all organized, you mind just kind of sharing how this came about for this call?
Yeah, so I share a lot of my progress in my first year of blogging, my ups, my downs, my ins, my outs. And so I've kind of developed a small community on my channel. And one of the subscribers who's been active in it, Daniel Workman, reached out in a comment and asked if we would go over his website. And I really enjoy doing stuff like this, although I lack a lot of experience when it comes to this. And I know me and you have talked in the past, and Ben, you guys all bring a lot of knowledge to the table. So I figured us three, I could kind of interject where I have my small knowledge, and you guys could interject where you have your larger knowledge, and we could together kind of review this. And I figured it would be helpful for the audience and helpful for all of us as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. And this site that we're going to take a look at, it's a little bit different. It's kind of out of our wheelhouse. So we'll do the best we can. First thing, just want to say thank you to Daniel for sharing your site. It takes a lot of guts to share your site, make it public, especially with such a young site. So I'll get into that in just a second here, especially when you're asking us to critique it. We'll do our best to just kind of be nice about it and offer constructive criticism. We're not here to tear the site apart or anything like that, obviously. So don't take anything in a negative way. So just to go over some of the stats here, the site launched in June, so it's literally just a few months old. If I remember correctly, I think he said that he purchased the domain in April or May and started publishing content in June. It's got about 50 posts on it right now, getting about 400 page views per month, which is actually quite a bit at this point. 100% informational content, and I think the plan right now is to stick to that. His goal is to monetize with ads and display ads and only display ads. So as Mike said, the guy's name is Daniel. He's inspired, or for this site, he was inspired by an international trade economics teacher. He has other sites in the same space, and they're actually quite a bit older, more authoritative. We can get back to that a little bit later. He considers himself a technical researcher, and he considers his sites to be educational portals. And he said that his revenue spikes during basically the school season. So I think he said September to May or something along those lines. And he said he's really passionate about international trade. And that's actually why he created the site. His goal wasn't actually to make money. That's just a benefit on the side, but he's actually really passionate about it. He actually likes doing technical research. But obviously, if you can find a way to make money, that's even better. So that's just a little bit of history on the site. So the site itself is called importedconsumerproducts.com. So what we'll do from here is I'll bring that up on the screen. So let me share my screen here. All right, so can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, I got it.
Yep.
All right, so I'm thinking from here, we can just kind of all go over it. We'll just kind of look at various pages on the site, just give our thoughts on it, things that we do differently or things that we like or whatever. So why don't we start with you, Ben, because we haven't heard from you yet. So what's your initial impressions of the homepage here for importedconsumerproducts.com?
So yeah, the initial look, I was a little confused on what it was, but like you mentioned, it is an educational site, so that all makes sense for me. The site looks good, it's clean, it's simple. It's got a lot of the popular posts on the side, which is awesome. And being an educational site, I also like the fact that it has a search bar. So if you are a student looking for something, you can just search whatever you're looking for. That's my initial, touchdown on this.
Awesome. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, same initial thoughts. My first thought when I opened it, aside from just not being used to seeing more of a world economic standpoint on a blog versus, say, maybe something consumer driven or product driven in the US only. With that aside, and just kind of wrapping my head around of what it was in the bigger picture, I think it's great. I think it's got a nice, clean design. I think it's laid out well. It's not jumbled up. I think the menus are easy to navigate. And like Ben said, I think for informational content, a student accessing the site, I think it's a great site.
Yeah,
One
I
other
agree
thing
with you guys.
Go ahead. I was gonna say one other thing I did notice is that caught my eye initially was looks like the logo and the header's cut off. I just figured I'd call that out since it's right there on the screen.
Yeah. So and maybe that's intentional. Hard to say, but yeah, it's a good catch. Yeah, my initial thoughts were basically the same. I think the site looks really professional. When I first opened it up, black and white sites, I usually like to see a little bit more color. But then when you kind of dive into what the topics are on this site, it makes sense to be a little bit more. I don't know what the term is. It's not boring, but it's an educational site, so you don't want to have vibrant colors and whatnot. One thing I'd probably change on here, just a suggestion, not a big deal, but this bar across the top, so your menu here, I'd probably get rid of the sticky menu just because if you're going to have a sticky menu, you want it to be something that's going to bring your bounce rate down, pages that you really want to visit often. And I don't think most people are going to want to visit your about page, contact, and so on. So it's just taking up space on the page. So I'd probably get rid of that. Otherwise, it looks really nice. Navigation's good. Sidebar's clean. Just has a nice blog roll right on the left here, which is completely fine. Looks like you're using the Magazine Pro theme. Yeah, it looks really nice. So domain and niche. What are you guys' thoughts? So Mike, what do you think about the domain name, Imported Consumer Products? Like, what does that tell you when you first hear that? What kind of site do you think that is?
I think it does a good job of giving the overall direction of the website. So when I hear imported consumer products, there's not many other ways to think about it other than they're discussing, the import export of consumer products. So I think it does directly just dive into what the topic of the blog is. So I think that's done well. I think it's simple, it's to the point. It's a little long, but it does make it clear what the direction of the site is.
Yeah, and I kind of, for me, when I first saw that, I was actually expecting a product-based site, which it is to an extent, but I was more actually expecting to see like an e-commerce site where you are purchasing products. But I don't think the domain name is bad by any means. It's nice and short, 3 words, pretty simple. That's always a good thing, and it covers it. So, like you said, Ben, any additional thoughts or?
Not right off on that topic, no.
Okay, what about the niche itself? Are you guys familiar? Because I know I'm not too familiar with international trade or anything like that. So this is definitely new territory for me. I mean, what about you, Ben? I mean, when you first saw this site, you understand what you're looking at, or?
I mean, like I said, initially it was confusing, but once he said it's educational site, it popped a lot more for me. But yeah, it's definitely outside of what we normally do, and which isn't a bad thing necessarily. I'm not saying that at all. It's just not something that we normally do.
Yeah, and I agree, because we typically would go into like hobby niches. That's everything we target is kind of end users, hobbies, things like that. And this is more geared towards researchers, students. So it's a completely different target audience, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually a good thing to go a different avenue than everybody else. It's something I would never even consider. So it's actually pretty interesting. So,
and
Mike,
one other thing is if you were to outsource something like this, seems like it'd be really hard to outsource any of these articles. So
that's a good point. It probably would be tough because as we dive into the posts themselves, they are there's a lot of really detailed content, and obviously he's researching it, or I'm assuming he's writing his own post, but it is pretty technical stuff. So you're gonna probably pay top dollar if you want to outsource content like that.
Yes.
Any thoughts, Mike, on the niche selection?
No, but it kind of mirrors what you guys initially thought. So from my standpoint, even as green as I am, I wrap my head around things North America based, consumer based, things that are going, like you said, hobbies, things that are going to drive your average North American consumer to Google. And because I'm thinking from a monetization standpoint, and I'm thinking about, revenue standpoint, but when you remove that monetization hat and you think about it from more of a research or a data or a statistics standpoint, it's actually a very good data driven website. But also, like Ben said, and you said, outsourcing content would be a challenge because you would really need to find someone, and good luck. I mean, they might be out there, but like you said, you're going to pay top dollar for them, and you're going to really need to thoroughly check that work that comes back just because of the statistics, the percentages, the numbers. You really want to make sure that's clear when you publish that.
Yeah, good points. And you bring up a good point on monetization too. And we can touch on that a little bit later, but this site to me it comes across as being difficult to monetize. But as Daniel told us, his goal isn't to make money. He wants to make money, obviously, but he's actually just passionate about it. If that's the case, go after whatever makes you happy. That's what's most important. But we can come back to monetization towards the end here. So the next thing I want to jump into is the about page. So I'll just share some of my initial thoughts on this one, because a few things jumped out at me about the about page. So first of all, it looks good. It's very, very short, and that's okay. I mean, it's not a huge deal. I mean, I'd probably make it a little bit bigger. The formatting is nice. You have some bolded text to emphasize phrases and whatnot. That's great. But the first thing that jumps out at me that's probably not such a good thing is this image. It looks very, very old. And of course, the name is not Daniel. And that can be okay. It could be an alias. I'm almost thinking this is his professor that he talked about when we were talking to him via email. And maybe that's okay too. Hopefully you got his permission if that's the case. But whatever, the image itself, I mean, I think I'd try to find something a little bit more modern, whether it's your professor or you or whatever. It jumps out at me. Like when I first saw this, it was like a red flag to me, even if it's not an actual problem. So that just jumped out at me. Another thing that I noticed here as well, so just the writing style. So if you look up here, you're seeing, you say my, I, and you go down towards the bottom, then you switch over to we, our, we, and so on. And it's not a huge deal. A lot of people wouldn't pick up on that, but if you're reading this, you kind of want to know what perspective it's being written from. Is it being written by a person, or is it being written by a team, or what? And when you kind of mix and match within the same little chunk of text like this, that's kind of a red flag for me. And obviously across your site, you want to be consistent, especially within one page or one post, you want to be consistent. When you start outsourcing, it's very, very difficult, of course, but for one page, the about page specifically, I would probably clean that up and stick to one style or the other. So guys, any thoughts on the about page here?
I think you covered all 4 paragraphs.
Yeah, I think those are all accurate assessments. The first thing that did jump out at me was the picture. Although whether that's Daniel or his professor, either one is obviously fine. However, I just think giving it the appearance of something more modern and more, not even modern, I guess modern is not the best word, just something more realistic for a person who's actively monitoring the site today versus, a staff picture taken from X amount of years ago. I think just something, even if it's in your backyard or on your deck, it gives it it raises that trust factor just a little bit.
Exactly. And that's what it really comes down to, just the authenticity of the site. And then that just kind of throws it off when you look at the about page. And then remember, you have that about page stuck to your header right here, front and center. So it's going to probably get some clicks. All right. So what about the legal pages, Ben? How do you feel? Did he do a good job covering all the other pages on the site? Privacy policy, contact. He's got some stuff in the footer down here, terms, conditions. What were your thoughts on some of that stuff?
Yeah. So as far as that goes, I think it all looks pretty good. Like you mentioned, I would lose the top bar though, and put that down in the footer just to clean the page up. But the legal pages look pretty good to me.
Okay. So what about this link to our research? Did you guys, I don't know if Mike, if you checked this out, any thoughts on this particular page?
I clicked on it and glanced at it, but I didn't take many notes on this.
Okay.
Yeah. So in that one, when I dove into the couple articles on the bottom, he references a lot of resources, but then when you go to his link to our research, he's referencing, you have a maximum word count when the rest of his articles, he doesn't have a maximum word count. So it's a little confusing to me on what he's expecting from others, but what he's pulling from others. That doesn't quite make sense to me.
Yeah, that's kind of the same feeling for me, that you're basically telling people that they have to be careful how much they take from your site. But as we dive into the posts, it looks like a lot of the content is pulled from other sites. And we could easily be wrong about that, but there's a lot of statistics and whatnot. As far as the text, I mean, I definitely didn't go digging around on the web to try to figure out if you're copying other sites or anything like that. So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But I mean, this is basically saying you have to limit what you copy, from my understanding at least, if you want to link to this site. And this might be standard practice for a research-driven site. I have no idea. I've never seen something like this before, but maybe it's standard practice. Who knows? So I guess let's bounce back to the homepage here. Mike, what are your thoughts on the titles in general, keywords? What do you think when you see these titles? Do you like them? And do they pop for you? Do you think they're clickable?
I think they're good headlines as far as a headline's purpose, which is getting the idea across of the article. I don't know how competitive this niche is. And so I don't know how much effort should or would be put into getting that headline that stands out from the crowd when you're so say for example a consumer driven headline in one of our typical hobby niches, you're going to be fighting for that click where a lot of people might be writing about the same type of comparison or type of article, and you need something that might grab some attentions. That may be the case for this niche. I haven't done a lot of keyword research for it, but as far as just getting the point across and letting people know exactly what they're clicking into, I think he does a good job. And now, if this is a competitive niche and I need to look at a little deeper, then I would want to see more of a attention grabbing headline.
Agree.
Yeah, I agree. The title or the headlines don't pop for me, but I don't know that they need to. And for this type of a site, these might be the best types of headlines. Like you said, for a hobby driven site like we build, you might have something. I mean, I wrote down a couple examples. They're not good because I just wrote them down really quickly. But for this first one, so Thailand's 100 top imported consumer products by sales, we'd probably do something more like, here are Thailand's absolute best imported consumer products, or these are the top imports from Thailand that you must know about, or something like that. Something to just grab a little bit more attention, get those clicks. But those titles really don't fit a research site. So, you know, it's tough to say. And I did very, very little keyword research on this site as well. I mean, I saw that there was some search volume on these types of terms. It seemed pretty low, but that's not a bad thing, of course. So yeah, I feel the same way. I just echo what you said. All right, so you got any other thoughts on that, Ben, or you pretty good there?
Not pretty good. I mean, like you said, it's the titles are targeting specific keywords, which is good, but it is a little bland. But you know, educational site, that may be what we're looking for here.
That's what I think of when I think of educational, and it's probably not a good thing, but
it reminds me of Wikipedia or something.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's just jump into a post and just kind of see what we think here. So let's start with you, Ben. So what's your initial impression of these posts? I think you probably looked at a few of them. How do they look overall?
Yeah, overall they look pretty good. The one thing that jumps out to me right off the bat is there's no feature image. Again, that might be okay for this type of site, being educational. I do like the table of contents for this purpose, being educational. You can kind of click through and go to your subtopics. And there is a good use of headings in it too. So it does have a lot going for it, you know, being an educational site that it is.
Right, Mike?
Yeah, I think the content is well written. I think it's full of data that would have to be properly cited just to kind of add to that authenticity of the data that you're presenting to your readers. I assume based on these numbers that there was quite a bit of research put into it. Again, that could be a challenge when you talk about outsourcing content. However, if you're writing all the content yourself and you're into that, like, you know, Daniel is, it might not be much of a challenge. As far as subheadings, again, I would probably only put more effort into them if I felt like this, where he was fighting for rankings and keywords and clicks. And I think it would really come down to whether or not this niche is fairly competitive in the market. If it's not, the subheadings are probably fine. If it is competitive, then I'd probably look for a little more effort in the subheadings. But again, I'm not too sure how deep this competition goes in this area.
Yeah, as far as my thoughts, I mean, I agree with what you guys said. I think overall the posts look really nice. Table of contents, obviously, you got small paragraphs. That's great for readability. That's great for display ads if you add display ads down the road. I like the bolded text throughout. It's not overdone. Helps to make the article more scannable, which is great. Great use of headlines, subheadings. Tables are great. I do question where this data is coming from and if it's up to date. And I'm assuming you probably, you know, are using some kind of API with data source and pulling this data in real time. Because otherwise, obviously, it'd be almost impossible to keep your site up to date. Yeah, I mean, I think overall it looks really good. There are a few concerns that I wrote down. So one, I guess, is the use of dates or just the data in general. So you have like a lot of information here. The table probably updates, but do these paragraphs and whatnot update as well? I mean, are these dates here updating? Are all these statistics updating automatically? Or are these things that, you know, in two years, 5 years, whatever, it doesn't really make much sense to look at these articles anymore? Because obviously, as you add more content to the site, it's going to get very difficult to keep this stuff up to date if you have to do it manually. And maybe it is pulling automatically. I have no idea. Another thing that I noticed here too, let me just pull up a couple examples. So I noticed that a lot of the content is very similar. So let me pull up a couple of articles here. So like most valuable markets for selling imported sugar. Let's try this one. For selling imported diamonds. So the titles are similar. And then if you look at the content, so if you kind of go down to sugar is a consumer convenience product, and you scroll down here, diamonds are a consumer specialty product, and you just kind of start reading diamond satisfies criteria of consumer good, also called end product, blah, blah, blah. In contrast, products like turbojets are usually purchased by companies or government entities. And then you look at these other ones. Sugar satisfies criteria of consumer good, also called end product. In contrast, products like turbojets, usually purchased by companies or government entities. There's a lot of content like that across articles where it's just the same. My main concern there is Google might look at that as duplicate content, and you might have a hard time ranking as a result. But for a research site like this, you're going to have a lot of content that's very similar. So I don't know how big of an issue it is, but it's just something that I noticed. You guys, any other concerns anything else that kind of jumped out at you on these posts?
I guess for me, it'd be nice to see some external links rather than just referencing all kinds of stuff and cramming it into an article. We know it's all being pulled from somewhere, but external links aren't going to hurt you. And then not seeing any internal links either is kind of weird.
That's what I was going to ask about.
Which is, you know, if you're trying to monetize eventually, it'd be nice to kind of do that along the way and not have to go back and do as Jeff and I have done in the past.
Many times. Yeah, as far as external links, he does have the sources down here at the very bottom. So there's the sources, but and maybe this is the best approach for an information or for a research site. Because I know this is like when you write research papers, you put your sources separated like this. But for a website, typically you want to see the sources linked to within the article, where you're linking from, where you're pulling the data from. That's what I would want to see. No matter what kind of site I'm looking at, I want to know that if I read this sentence and it was taken from somewhere else, or the statistics were pulled from somewhere else, I would love this to be a link right here so I can click on it and dive into it further. Because I mean, especially when you have like a dozen links at the bottom like this, I mean, if you want to look into any of this kind of stuff, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to know what to look into.
And to follow up on that, if you go to link our research, he tells people to do that with his own content. So it seems like he would do that with other people's content, kind of, doubling back on that previous comment I made.
Sure. And any other thoughts? I mean, overall, these posts look great. So, I mean, they look great. They read a little dry, they're not engaging posts. Sugar is a sweetener commonly added to tea or coffee. Breakfast cereal is a key ingredient for baking and making desserts. It's dry content, but it's made for people doing research. So I wouldn't expect it to be engaging. So it's not really an issue. It would be an issue if this was about horseback riding or something like that. So, but overall, I think the posts themselves look great.
Yeah, I think it's well laid out. It's like you said, short paragraphs, bold is not overused or underused. I do believe the interlinking, but as far as the citations, it's fine to put them at the bottom. But as pointed out, I think adding them where they're used, it makes it easier for the user just to verify real quick. And it also adds to, in my opinion, again, the authenticity. When you're reading something, you see a stat real quick, but it's linked to immediately, rather than getting through the article, seeing a bunch of data, and then trying to go back and connect each dot.
Yep, I agree. All right, so let's talk about page speed. So I'm not going to bring it up just because I don't want to run the tool or anything, but I did run a few of these articles through Google PageSpeed Insight just to kind of see. So it pulled, I think it was 60 on mobile, 90 on desktop. So not terrible by any means. Definitely room for improvement there, especially on the mobile side. But the first thing that jumps out at me for that is there's no images in this post. There's no display ads. So I would not expect the mobile score to be a 60. I'd expect it to be over 90 for sure.
Yeah.
And my thought is probably it's because you have a table of contents plugin. You
Think that
have
API
a
plugin was doing
table
it?
plugin.
Yeah.
Was that?
That's what I was asking. If you thought it was that API data plugin.
That'd be my guess. And there's probably no way around it. I mean, it's probably pulling data every however many seconds or whatever, and it's going to slow down your site, but it is what it is. It's not a slow site by any means, but obviously the faster you can get your site to load, the better. And part of it could be hosting as well. I don't know what they're using for hosting. Then you might be using shared hosting, and that might be part of it as well, but just something to consider. Another thing that I looked into, so I did check backlinks, and this actually led me down a rabbit hole. So we don't pay attention to backlinks. We've talked about that in our channel plenty of times. But I did do a check on Ahrefs free tool, so their backlink checker, just to see what it showed for domain rating. And this site actually showed a domain rating of 27, and it's only 3 months old. So that's like unheard of, right? So that kind of was a red flag for me. So I just kind of clicked on some of the links and just kind of looked at some of the other sites that were linking to the site. And it turns out the guy, Daniel, he owns those sites as well. So he's linking to his own site from his sites. That's probably what's boosting the ranking on this one. That's probably completely fine. Now, we don't deal with backlinks. We just let things happen naturally. I don't know if Google will have an issue with that, see that as unnatural growth when you have such quick links from such higher authority sites like that. May or may not be an issue, but just something to keep in mind for Daniel there, that that does seem like unusually quick growth on the backlink side.
Let me ask you real quick before you move on, Jeff.
Yeah.
And Ben. So I don't know a whole lot about how that stuff is viewed, and maybe you guys don't either, but I'm interested in your opinions. So when you link to your own sites with your own PBN or your own little network of websites, do you think it's viewed that way, like a PBN in Google's eyes, or do you think there's danger in that as far as how that's perceived?
I think there's a fine line. I think there's probably, to an extent, it's fine, and then you get past a certain point and it's not. Our personal approach has been we don't interlink our sites at all, zero. Now, with that being said, occasionally we get articles written by outsourced writers where they're linking internally because our articles just are out there ranking now. That's completely natural. We're going to let that go. But we've never made it a point to link from this site to that site because we own both and this one's got high authority or whatever. We don't do that just because we don't want to run the risk. We've always been low risk, just do things as white hat as possible. It's probably not an issue, honestly, but that's just how we feel. So, but we don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
In our opinion.
Yep. So monetization. So what are you guys' thoughts? How can you monetize this site? He wants to do display ads. I mean, is that going to work on this site? What do you guys think?
I think he'll be able to run display ads. However, I think because if you look at the traffic sources and the country traffic sources where he gets a lot of his traffic, I think he'll be able to monetize, but I think his RPM or EPMV will generally stay fairly low just due to the non-North American traffic bulk.
I agree. And I also think a site like this is going to be difficult to get with those, get on those premium ad networks like AdThrive, Mediavine. I just don't see them approving a site like this where you have a lot of this, even if it's original content, every article is very similar to the next. And it's a lot of just, it's really data driven. And I've never seen those types of sites monetized through those networks. I'm sure he can get with an AdSense, obviously, Ezoic. I'm sure he can get on Ezoic as well. So that's fine. But like you said, because of probably there's an international audience there, it's probably going to be lower RPMs or EPMVs.
Yeah, but the good news that I see is that it's written in a way that it's already prepped for ads. There's only 2 to 3 sentences per paragraph. And if he ever gets there, he doesn't have to go back and rework a bunch of stuff like we have done in the past.
Yeah.
Not to keep bringing up the past, but
you bring up a good point, because we've done that so many times where we publish 300 posts and then figure out something we have to change. We have to go back to 300 posts to fix it. So This site's actually really well done as a whole. Not just for ads, but just the way it looks. It's really clean looking. It looks very professional, and being an educational site, that's obviously what you want. So any other monetization options that you guys see for him in the future, aside from display ads? Digital
I have to
products,
look
physical
at-
products, anything?
I don't know that physical products may be a fit for a site like this, but I feel like maybe some direct partnerships might be beneficial to maybe some import export companies who are looking to maybe monitor or expand their reach, and as far as buyers and sellers and people who might be interested in moving products who are researching this data for their products. I think you might be able to find a market there. But your typical general North American ad revenue and monetization methods might not be the way to go on this.
I agree. I'm sure there's opportunities there. I'm not seeing them either. I just see the display ads, and honestly, he said he doesn't care that much about the money. He does this because he's passionate about it. If that's the case, then nothing to worry about.
I got to find one of those niches.
Yeah. So throw some ads on it when you can, and if you make some money, great. If you don't, then that's fine too. All right, so let's just wrap this up. Any final thoughts? What's your overall opinion of this site? How's he doing? Is he off to a good start? Should he change course, go in a different direction?
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess back to sum it up real quick. Overall, the site looks great. It's structured well. It's simple. It's got a clean interface. As we mentioned, monetizing it, I would foresee it being difficult. But again, this is kind of outside of what we typically do. So yeah, I think it looks good and clean though, for all said and done.
Mike?
Yeah, same. It's a very clean, nice looking website. I think the articles are well written, well formatted. The table of contents is in place. And especially when you have that much data you're throwing at a user, I think it's good to break it up in a table of contents. Monetization will be a challenge. It's not impossible. I think you might just have to get a little creative with how you find ways to make money with a site like this. Like I said earlier, maybe some direct ad partnerships, some companies who might be looking for connecting potential buyers or sellers with their distribution networks. This might be the kind of medium that would facilitate that. But overall, I like it. I think it's an interesting site. I like data in general, and I think this site offers a lot of good information to people out there. So clean, simple, to the point. I think it's a good site overall.
Awesome. Yeah, and I agree with everything you guys said. Yeah, overall, great looking site, structured well, just super clean and professional, which is what you want for a research site. There's just those two red flags for me, which, the about page, just mainly the image and the name. So just what's going on there, let us know. And then the backlinks as well. That's the only other thing that kind of throws me off. But those links are coming from your own site, so it's probably completely fine. The about page might be fine as well. But the site overall, I think, looks really good. I've seen plenty of sites that look absolutely terrible, and this one's definitely on the other end of the spectrum. It looks really, really nice. And I think you're off to a great start. I wouldn't really change course. It would be nice to see you go in a little bit different direction with some of the content. Maybe try to mix it up. And I don't know how you'd even do this because I don't know enough about this topic, but there's a lot of content on here that's very, very similar. Maybe there's a way to kind of drive it into a different direction, sneak in some other types of posts in here where they're not structured exactly the same way. But again, I don't know enough about this kind of stuff to really make a recommendation like that. So any other thoughts before we wrap it up?
The only thing I forgot to touch on just now is what you brought up, and that is, depending on competitive level of these keywords and this niche in general, I may alter a lot of those article headlines just to go for that attention grabbing click. Other than that, overall pretty good.
Good point.
Awesome. All right, so big thanks to Daniel for sharing your site. Everybody watching, definitely go check the site out. Look around, give us your thoughts in the comments. It takes a lot of guts, like I said early on, to share a site with everyone and ask for us to critique it, which we definitely did. Hopefully you take this as constructive criticism. We definitely like the site overall, so thanks again for sharing it. Big thanks to Mike as well for joining us on the channel and joining us on the call today. Definitely looking forward to doing another one in the near future. And by the way, guys, if you want to see more videos with us and Mike, site reviews, Q&As, whatever, definitely let us know because we definitely want to do more of these calls. So thank you, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both to Ben and yourself. I appreciate your guys' input and your collaborations you've done with me in the past, and I look forward to doing more. To Daniel, thank you very much for entrusting us with your site and sharing it with the audience. I know everyone did get a lot out of this. I look at my channel's analytics a lot, and there are a lot of people who are not gearing their sites toward just North America, like maybe myself and Jeff and Ben are. So this hopefully was beneficial to those who have more of a worldwide audience. And again, just thank you for trusting us with it and sharing it and letting us discuss it.
Awesome. All right. We'll catch you guys later. Good talking.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.